Hi, 511. This is Dr. Keisler, and I wanted to give you some updates and a little bit of feedback. I feel like I haven't talked to you in so long. It's been 2 weeks since I missed last week, so I do apologize about that. I've been so backed up on the work. Just never happened. And the kids had the extra day off this week, and so everything's just been thrown into a tizzy. But anyway, enough about me. I did go in, and throughout the week I've been trying to read through your literature review forum, and I was going to make a screencast about it, and I had some examples, and then what I kind of realized was some of you just needed some more individual feedback. I was going to try to do the generalizations piece when I started reading it on Wednesday, and then I realized that it just made more sense to put the comments on here. So you'll see I went through a few this morning and later this morning, and I just took some of those thoughts that I had been putting into a PowerPoint, and I posted them directly onto that week 9 or CPA number 9 forum. So this was the forum that you did the where you did your 3 articles. So it was the second forum where you went ahead and you reviewed or summarized 3 articles. So just a point in general that I could make to everybody is make sure that, you know, when you summarize, and you don't have to do this again, but that you actually summarized in your own words and didn't just post me the abstracts. A few of you didn't put your question up, so I tried to kind of read through the articles that you looked at and figure out what your questions were from that. I didn't have them right on top, so I may not have given you feedback about that particular piece. But what I've noticed is that just a few questions still need a little bit of tweaking. So this is probably the last real feedback you'll get about your question. And so what I want you to think about is when you start to write the lit review, that you're at the point where you've read enough articles that you don't necessarily need to make the articles fit your question. But if you're feeling like the articles you selected give you a lot of information that's really focused, but they don't quite answer your question, then go ahead and tweak the question a little bit to make it fit. So again, you're not doing a research study, so it's okay if you change that question a little bit even now. Because sometimes you found, I'm sure, that your questions were a little too specific. I'm trying to think of a good example of where I saw that. But anyway, if I felt that your question needed to be changed a little, I did go ahead and I put it as a comment to you on your post. So take a look. And in most cases, it was just like 1 or 2 words. So for example, I remember one of you wanted to talk about students who have been designated ELLs for more than 7 years. Well, we actually have a term for that now, and it's called long-term English learner. And so that if you want to look for an article or 2 on long-term English learners, it may help you find exactly the article that you were looking for. If I didn't leave you any feedback, so there's a few of you that didn't get any feedback, it means that it was fine. So what I saw in terms of your question is completely answerable question, and that the articles that you were selecting were relevant to your question and would help you kind of explore that particular issue. So there wasn't going to be kind of any problem with it. So here's an example of one when I was talking about the question being taken. So I hope you don't mind that I'm using yours as an example. But you wanted to know, does an ELD intervention program with an emphasis on oral language development in academic English in elementary grades 4 and 5 narrow the academic gap by 8th grade? So there's a lot of different areas that you could look there to find articles. And I saw that you did find some really good articles, but I don't think that they're going to help you exactly answer your question. So what I was thinking when I saw this question was, okay, well, doesn't necessarily need to be an ELD intervention, right? It just could be a focus on academic English or academic language. You probably will find, we used to call it academic English more, and we've kind of transitioned to calling it academic language. So you may have better luck searching the terms academic language. And then with grades 4 through 5, you can just put upper elementary. And it kind of implied in this question is a longitudinal study, because you want to know if they get the intervention in Form 5, what's the outcome by grade 8. And academic language instruction has been in vogue for the past several years, but it wasn't necessarily, it's kind of the evolution of our work with English learners. And so while some folks have been talking about it for a long time, if you look at the systemic functional linguistics literature, they've been talking about this for a long time. But in terms of the academic language as instructional practices becoming mainstream, that's kind of developed over the years as we've kind of moved from this idea of bilingual programmings and sheltered instruction and supporting English language learners in the classroom and English language development classes. And so, in looking at why the gap still persists, we come up with the focus on academic language. And so I just gave some suggestions here. All of these articles are still great, and you can still use these articles. But in terms of really taking that question and tweaking it a bit so that you can make sure you answer it is, what are the effects of instruction in academic language on English learners? What is the effect of academic language instruction on academic achievement of English learners? So just a little bit more concise in that question. And so thank you for letting me use you as an example. But that was kind of the suggestion that I gave to several of you. So your questions were like that. And I'm sure that what you've been finding is as you read, you're like, oh, this is a good article and it's interesting and it's related, but it's not really answering my questions. That was the feeling that I got from a few of you. So I did leave that feedback, and hopefully, you're getting to the point where you've got enough articles. If you still feel like you not quite there, then go ahead and look at the comments that I may have left for you and see if it gives you any additional direction on the articles that you need to include in the lit review. You still have quite a few weeks to work on that, and you're lucky. I realized that when I was doing your checklist this week, when I taught this class the last time, they had to turn it in on Thanksgiving week, so at least you don't have to do it on Thanksgiving week. You have until later in the semester to work on that. So let's see what else. There's not a ton of feedback. I did look at, besides that, I checked in on, a few of you had emailed me about the quiz. And so last week's quiz, there was a question on number 11. And so here we go. Question number 11 was, and I apologize for the, there's a couple of typos with the word following. That's so irritating. So I didn't realize that. Where did we go? Question 11. Okay, so which of the following is or are threats to non-equivalent comparison group design? And so the answer had been marked as C, the additive and interactive effects, when in fact the answer should be D. And so I had a few emails, people saying, they made an argument in the textbook, or they pointed out in the textbook that history and regression artifact or regression is also a threat to validity. And so I'll accept D, and I'm going to change D as the answer. And so I did just change on the quiz, but when I looked in your gradebook, I see that it didn't update it. So I'm going to give it a couple minutes to see. I may need to close my browser and open it back up. If it does not update, so those of you who got a 93, when I checked through a lot of those, you all got question 11 wrong. And so I will, I'll manually update it if it doesn't update, because I updated it kind of in the quiz itself. So so you were right to say that it was not just C, and keeping in mind that when you read about the non-equivalent comparison group design, that essentially non-equivalent just means that the assignment isn't random. So the researcher did not control the assignment to the groups, and so they give you that example in there of the study of the two different groups of teachers using two different groups of instructional strategies But those groups were, those groups were already determined, and then so they also looked at the groups of students, and so there was no random assignment of those teachers to either treatment group, and there was no random assignment of the students to either classroom, and so obviously it would be highly unlikely that the groups would be really similar in all of the things that they bring to them, and then the way that the treatment can be, what they'll take away from it. And so you'll see what you do in those types of studies is you have to have some kind of pre-test and post-test, and then when you look at your results, what you're doing is you're accounting for those differences in the beginning, and then what those differences look like at the end, and that's why you run that ANOVA regression to make sure that you account for the differences that you started with, and how that influences what you end up with, to see if what you have in between is statistically significant at all. So that's why these are kind of what we call quasi-experimental, right? So they don't have all of the characteristics of a true experimental design. And so in reference to the choices that you had to select from, history, regression artifact, the additive and interactive effects, they all can be considered biases or threats, right? So the history would be considerations of events that occur between that pre-test and post-testing time, may be different for one of the groups. In terms of the regression, you can start out with groups who are from different populations. It doesn't necessarily happen probably in that study that they give you the example from. But so there would be differences kind of when you start, and in terms of the additive and interactive effects, that's kind of when you bring in the treatment piece, where you bring in whatever it is that you're going to study, how those effects may influence the groups differently, considering that the groups are likely different in the way that they're made up to begin with. And so those are all the potential threats and biases, and so that's why you design it a particular way to try to not control for, but to address some of the potential bias that's just inherent in the design. So like I said, I went ahead and I fixed it in the quiz so it doesn't show up, and if your grade's not updated, then I will go ahead this weekend and I will update those for you. And so the last thing that I'll just address, I've got about 2 minutes here, is again how impressed I am with the quality of the historical errors. Like I said, but by far these are the best that I have had so far in the 3 times that I have taught this class. And so I thought again that Group C, you did a really excellent job. Group B, you did a great job last week, and so I really enjoyed taking a look at these. I will give you, I just haven't gone through all of them yet, but you'll get grades on your wiki itself, and then on the article assessment, the article analysis templates. I'm sorry, I'm getting my classes confused. The article analysis templates that you turned in. So you'll be getting some feedback on those as I get to it. So other than that, just keep on doing what you're doing. You guys are definitely on track. This week we're taking a look at Group C's work, and so our forum reflects that. I hope by the end of the weekend to get a lot of your grades updated. If not, probably won't get to all of the reflection templates that have been turned in, but I should get through all your forums. And so you will all were graded on the last forum, but I need to go in and check some of these. So have a good and productive weekend. Enjoy, if you're in this area, that the weather is going to cool down. It's actually going to feel like fall, which is fantastic because it was very hot this week. And I will talk to you next week.